Hello, hello, everyone. Hello, this is M again. Yes, just feel that. Feel the energy. Feel your life force. Feel it. Feel and be thankful for the fact that you are present and not absent in the living and dead sense. You are present. Feel what it means to be present. As I, you know, do my walk, my run, I'm also making myself present to the fact that I'm here. And I'm not just here for decoration. I'm not here to be invisible. I'm not here to be ignored. I'm not here to not get what I want. I'm not here to not act on what I see. I'm not here to not experience what I want to experience. I'm here to be seen by me above everything else. I'm here to be heard by me above everybody else. I'm here to experience and to really to lean into the desires that have been set in me before I even came into this world to fulfill and to experience. I'm here to act on what I see and share with others the vision that I see. That's what makes me a leader. I'm here because I have my own experiences and they are exclusive to everybody else's. And I want to invite you into that awareness. I want to invite you into that knowing that what you are experiencing, no one else is experiencing. You don't have to try to explain your experiences to other people unless you decide to. Just know that no two people ever have the same experience. We share similar events, but not the same experience. In other words, two people can go through the same event and they both will create something totally different from it. They both will have it mean something different. They will both come to different conclusions about what the event means. That is what makes every experience exclusive to the person. So even when two people are making mad love with each other, they are not experiencing the same thing. I know when I finally woke up to that reality, it was kind of mind blowing to me because, I grew up under the assumption that they were having the same feelings. And the reality is we never are having the same feelings. We hardly ever really we don't even think, we haven't even been trained how to express the difference in what we feel with each other. We just say, yeah, I feel the same way. But the reality is, if we really start getting to know ourselves, we would have a nuanced description of what we are experiencing versus what the other person is experiencing. But sometimes we are afraid to even say the truth about what we are experiencing, which is why, faking orgasms, for a long time for women and for some time for men, but a higher number from women. A lot of women that I work with would tell me that in their relationships or in their marriages that they would fake orgasms, which means that what they were experiencing was not necessarily as pleasurable as what their partner was experiencing. And women have been socialized to not express their own desire to be pleasured, which now is changing dramatically, which it needed to change. Because, sexual pleasure is not just for men. Sexual pleasure is for all beings that are able to experience it and enjoy it. But we have to step up and stand up for our experiences, for what we're experiencing or not experiencing. All right, now I didn't want to talk to you about sex. I'm still talking about fear, because even that is an example of fear. Fear will keep us not having orgasms in our life. And I'm not just talking about sexual orgasms. I'm talking about just the idea of what orgasms represent. They represent an explosion of joy and peace and just good, pleasurable feelings, an explosion of them happening all at one time, such that it's almost like it just explodes in the system. But we can have orgasms in every part of our life. Orgasms are not exclusive to only sexual intercourse. They are a part of, raising children, a part of, making good on our career and being successful in our career, being fulfilled in our career, being fulfilled in our spiritual practice, being fulfilled in our relationships with others and loving others. There are all sorts of orgasmic moments that we can experience. But I want to talk about how fear impacts what I consider, what I call our second mind. Now, I know that to you that may not occur as something on the radar, but I want you to consider that we have two minds. You probably never been taught this, but you've just experienced it. You've been aware of it. You've been aware that you have what sometimes the Bible considers a double mind. And that means is that there are two trains of thought operating in your sphere. In other words, two trains of thought vying for the same one portion of energy. So the energy that you have is coming from one source, you. However, your mind is the distributor of that energy. So when you have a double mind, what that means is the energy is being split into two different directions. Now, the energy that is usually the mind that is getting the most energy is the one where we are paying the most attention to. Say it again. The mind that that's receiving the most energy, that we're putting the most power into, is the mind that's paying more attention to one thing or the other, or is the one that's constantly distracted, which means the energy cannot build up enough in order to manifest anything different than what already has manifested. So I asked you about the second mind. Have any of you heard of a concept called the first mind? Because if we have a second mind, that means we have to have a first mind. It's sort of like having a last will in testament. We often never consider that if we came up with the concept of having a last will, then there must have been a first will. And so I want you to consider that our first mind is in alignment with our first will. And our first will is what we decided and chose for ourselves before we came into this world. The life we wanted to live, the solutions that we wanted to create, the things that we wanted to experience, who we wanted to be our parents, etc., etc. All those were a part of our first will. And in conjunction with that first will, we have a first mind, which is really a compilation of things like our intuition, our instincts, our gut, our soul, things that are already been set in place, that have been calibrated in conjunction to or in alignment with our first will. So everything that is in alignment with our first will, calibrated to be in alignment with it before we came into this world, is a part of our first mind. Our first mind works entirely and only for us. It is not trying to please anybody else. It's not trying to impress anybody else. It's not trying to prove anything to anybody else. It's not competing with anybody else. And it is never comparing itself to anybody else. The first mind is set on being on your side and only on your side, because it doesn't know anybody else's first mind, doesn't know what anybody else's first mind is calibrated to. It only knows what yours is calibrated to. Now, here's what fear does. Fear comes into the picture, or I should say, this world, when we experience our first traumatic event, and there's no one there to explain to us what it means or what it could possibly mean, and to give us alternative meanings. As children, we usually land on the idea that something is wrong with us, that this traumatic moment happened because we are not enough, we're not good enough, we're not lovable, etc., etc., and the list can go on. And then that creates our first big moment where we start depositing large amounts of our power into what we don't want. And then that begins to then develop a mind. Now I want you to get this. When we come into this world, we come in with our first mind. That's already there. But we have to develop another mind. What I mean by that, we have to develop a mind that will represent our first mind. Because our first mind is all ethereal, it's all spiritual, so it needs to have an intellectual representation out in the world. It needs to have an intellectual avatar. So the intellectual avatar, which will be the thing that manifests what is in the first mind into the physical realm, must be in alignment with the first mind. But what happens is the world begins to tell us who we are before we've discovered who we are and what's in our first mind. And that second mind is not in alignment at all with our first mind. And that's what creates the double mind. Because the second mind that we create, that we develop, it should be a reflection of the first mind, which will bring harmony and peace into our lives. I'll talk about it more in our other videos. Stay tuned.